we made a video a while ago talking about what the best copy ability was, and that took everything into account, from defense to offense to how cool it was to all the multiple different attacks and how it could knock out not just any boss but also different styles of enemies. But this time I want to primarily focus on attacks and to see which attack in the game is the strongest. So in order to calculate this, I'm not just taking a single hit into account, but rather an entire bar of that one attack, and you get to see this the most on bosses. So I'll be using Gormondo as our same boss every time, and every time I use a big hit, we can tell by how big the orange bar is, which is a continuous combo hit from one of Kirby's attacks. Also, something else that will not count even though it continues with the orange combo bar is just continuously spamming one attack, because you could just sit there and spam a very weak attack over and over and over again and just not take any damage. So I'll be very particular on which I choose. Now first, I have Ice Kirby. I don't have all of these super powered up. It would be literally impossible for me to get all those rare stones at this moment, so we'll just have to be going with what I got. Ice Kirby does not have a really good basic attack, but we gotta pay attention to this freeze and how much damage it does at once, because this is what we're gonna count. Because if you notice, it does a pretty significant amount of damage. So right now, the Ice Freeze Breath is number 1, but then we move on to Needle. Needle doesn't do a lot of damage on its own, but it's when you pick things up and throw them is when they really stack up damage. But the only problem here is you can only throw a specific amount of stars, and only a specific amount will land. You can't just pick up 10 stars and launch them to completely devastate his health, so we have to do what the most damage output was, and it's about 4 to 5 stars. Moving on, we have Twin Drill, which is the most powerful drill, but many of the attacks don't do enough damage on its own. They're just little chip damage that over time does damage, but it's just not going to work with this category. But there is one attack that could do massive damage, and that is the Circle Drill on the ground. Creating a circle around him and raising the terrain does a heck of a lot of damage, and actually is one of the best ones. Tornado Kirby has the same kind of vibes as Needle, where it doesn't do a lot of damage on its own, but when it picks things up and throws them, it could really be menacing. And with Tornado Kirby, you can actually pick up all of these stars, and once again, it feels like it does have a star cap. Not every single star is gonna land, so I was able to get around 4 or 5 consistently, and it does a heck of a lot of damage. It's once again up there and competing with one of our best so far. Remote Bomb is the strongest bomb power-up, but it's harder to chain than the regular Chain Bomb, and the Chain Bomb just doesn't do enough damage. So it's really hard to get an accurate reading on how much damage it's actually doing, and it's not really doing enough to even get on our list right now. Next up, we have the fabled Morpho Knight sword, and this sword is of course probably the most powerful thing in the game, but how powerful is its most powerful attack? Well, let's find out. So in order to get this thing off was very hard, because Gormondo kept swinging at me in order for me to get this charge off, which was just super annoying. But when I finally got it off, oh man, did it do damage. Now it is worth noting that the only abilities that I powered up was the Morpho Knight sword and the Space Ranger, but at the end of the day, this Morpho Knight sword is just doing that much damage regardless. Look how much damage that was, almost half of his health. Buzzsaw Cutter is a good ability for wiping out enemies, but it won't wipe out many bosses that quickly. But there is an attack that you can do up close, which is a melee attack, which does a hefty amount of damage. Now it's not as much as some of our highest ones, but it does do a pretty good job. Now we did skip Sleep for obvious reasons, but we're going to also have to skip Fire, at least Dragon Fire as well, because it's just hard to really calculate this, as each individual flame is doing individual hits, and it is one of those abilities that's just purely chip damage. You can get a giant flame on the ground, but it just seems to not do enough damage all at once to really calculate anything. So this is a really good copy ability, but as far as individual attack goes, it can't really be on this list. Now Time Crash is technically more powerful than regular Crash, but it's a weird one to calculate as well, as we could just say the entire, attack itself, as long as that time lasts, you can keep attacking it, and technically that's its ability. Or you can just say each individual attack, and I'm going to go with individual touch. Every time you touch Gormondo, it has an individual hitbox, and we're going to go off of those. However, it would be smarter just to use regular Crash to calculate that one giant boom, and that's what we're going to do and go off of, and it does take out just about the entire half of the health bar. It's definitely a pretty big attack, and it even blinds you. Goodness gracious. Of course, another strong one we have is the DDD Double Hammer, and this thing, once charged up, can do a heck of a lot of damage with its fire twirls and everything, because it does a little bit of fire chip damage as well. In some amazing way, it beats out both Crash and Sword extremely well. And let me remind you that this masked hammer isn't even powered up to its fullest yet. That is pretty insane. And finally, we have Ranger Kirby, which we're going to use as Super Charge Up, which is going to create this orb of energy in order to do chip damage for a small amount of time, and it does a really good job. Of course, it's nowhere near as powerful as some of our others we've seen so far, but it definitely gets the job done, depending on especially how big your enemy is and where you hit them at. Now, this is our list of the most powerful attacks in the game, and of course, it's going to come down to the top 3 being Sword, Crash, and Hammer. Now, I could have added Kirby's suction ability, just him spitting stars, but that's really just how many stars you can fit in Kirby's mouth. I don't feel like dealing with that right now. So this is our top 3. But I didn't want to end here, and plus we're so close to finally getting a one-hit boss, so I decided to go a little further with this. I needed to get more rare stones in order to level some of these up, so I did the glitch where you fly into the Coliseum and only have to fight like 2 mini bosses and you get the rare stone. I'm sure you guys can look up in a past video or somebody else's video of how to do this. It's really not that difficult. But then I was able to level up Crash all the way, and this is what I got. Yeah, that was a heck of a lot of damage and definitely is going to put Crash as the best one so far. And I kept trying Hammer again and it just seemed like it wasn't as strong or as powerful as the first time, and just pretty much exactly the same. Nothing's really changed with this one. So Crash is going to win as our strongest copyability attack right now, but I decided to go even further and see if we can somehow get as close as we can to a one-shot with Goramondo. So in order to do so, let's power it up even more. Crash is now powered up as high as it can go, and of course I'm going to buy me an attack boost in order to use right before the battle. Now let's see what will happen with this new charged up ability. Yep guys, we officially did it. It is possible to actually one-shot a boss with the fully maxed up, charged up Crash ability. You'll have to have it maxed up all the way with your rare stones and also using your power up attack, and man, it really does devastate bosses. Now I'm actually very interested in trying this out with all the different bosses in this game and seeing exactly how powerful it is. So if you're interested in seeing this again or something similar like this, such as what is the weakest attack in the game, make sure you leave a like and subscribe to stay up to date on all things Kirby and the Forgotten Land and Nintendo in general. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you all on the next one. See you guys.